Now let us see about a ER model. So when it comes to ER model, it is said to be entity relational model. So the overall logical structure of a database will expressed in a graphical manner is said to be a ER diagram. Now let us see the features of ER model. So it gives the structure to the data, and also this model can be evolved independent of any database management system, and it is also a good aid for database design, and it is easy to visualize and understand the concepts. So let us see the basic terminologies in database management, that is ER model: entity set, attributes, relational sets. When it comes to entity set, an entity is a thing or object in the real world. For example, person, car, student. These are all the examples of entity. When it comes to attributes, the properties that describe an entity are called attributes. For example, let us have a customer as an entity. So the properties which describe the entity is said to be attributes. So what are the properties of customer? Customer ID, customer name, address. These are the attributes of a entity customer. Now let us have the look into a various type of attribute. So there are simple attributes, composite attributes, single valid attributes, multi-valid attributes, and derived attributes. When it comes to simple attributes, an attribute that can be divided into further subparts. So for example, the attribute cannot be divided into further subparts, that is said to be simple attributes. So the roll number, account number, these cannot be divided into further parts. Whereas like customer name, address, so the customer name can be divided into first name, middle name, and last name, whereas address can be divided into street, city, and pin code. So the attributes that can be divided into a set of subparts are said to be composite attributes. What about single valid attributes? As its name says, an attribute having only one value in a particular entity is said to be a single valid attribute. For example, a person can have only one name. So name, ID, street, these are the single valid attributes. Whereas the customer phone number and hobby, these are the multi-valid attributes because one can have more than one hobby. So these are said to be multi-valid attributes. When it comes to derived attributes, the attribute is derived from other attributes or entity, let's say related attributes. So whereas the derived attributes is like that which is derived from some other attributes. For example, date of birth. So age is a derived attributes. So how can we know the age? It is derived from date of birth. So it is said to be derived attributes. When it comes to relationship set, relationship is an association among several entities. For example, person and company. These two are the entities, they have a relationship. So person works for the company. So here works for is a relationship. The person has a relationship with company. So there are types of relationships. Unary relationship. And unary relationship exists when an association is maintained within a single entity. So the boss and worker are two employees, manages association. And binary relationship. A binary relationship exists when two entities are associated. For example, publisher publishes book. Here publisher is an entity, book is an entity. So the two entities are associated by publish. Ternary relationship. A binary relationship exists when three entities are associated. For example, teacher teaches subject, teacher teaches student. Here teacher, student, subject. These three are the three entities, and teachers is the relationship between among these three entities. Quaternary relationship. It exists between when there are four entities associated. Teacher studies subject, teacher studies course material, student studies course material. So when it comes to that, all four together is related. So there are constraints. The two main important type of constraints are mapping cardinalities and participation constraints. When it comes to mapping cardinalities or cardinality ratio, they express the number of entities to which another entity can be associated via relationship set. So there are one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. When it comes to one-to-one relationship, an entity in A is associated with at most one entity in B. An entity in B is associated with at most one entity in A. It can connect at least with only one entity. For example, customer depositor account, one to many. An entity in A is associated with any number of 0 or more entities in B. An entity in B is associated with at most one entity in A. So, customer depositor account, similarly, here A1 is related to B1 and B2, and A2 is related to B2 and B3. Many to many. So an entity in A is associated with at most one entity in B. An entity in B is associated with 0 or more number of entities in A. Here A1 and A2 are associated with only B1. Many to many. An entity in A is associated with any number of entities in B and vice versa. So what is this about the cardinality ratio? Now let us see about the participation constraints. So total participation. The participation of any entity set E in a relationship set R is said to be a total if every entity in E participates in at least one relationship with R. For example, salary relationship employee. So every employee gets a salary. Partial participation. If only some entities in E participate in a relationship in R. Employee relationship commission. So not every employee will get commission. Only few employees will get commission. So it is partial participation.